Today I sat down with Scott Needham. Scott is the founder of BuyBoxer, SmartScout, along with many other businesses. He talks very interestingly about what it means to scale back an operation. He had grown one to 65 million, realized the profitability wasn't there, brings it back down to 40 million. I talk a lot about scale versus growth in a lot of things I'm saying day to day. And this was a really surefire example of what it looks like. He also talks about selling a SaaS business and the future of SmartScout and just interesting conversations about what it is to build a technology-based company. So I, like all episodes, learned a ton, love the perspective of Scott, and I'm sure if you listen in, there'll be a few nuggets of information you take away just like I did. Welcome to Successful Scales, the show where I talk to world-class professionals on what it takes to scale successful businesses. I dive deep asking questions to people who are running unicorn businesses, to raising funds, to buying businesses, mergers and acquisitions, IP and patent law, what is to manage performance management. I mean, the list goes on. The idea really is, how do I create knowledge and learning for you guys listening in? And of course, myself, getting the floor with people who I, in many cases, would never dream to share a room with. Before we jump into the episode, I've got to give a special thank you to our sponsors. Firstly, over at Global Wide Advisors, a leading digital consumer products investment bank focused on optimizing the sales process. An incredible team, always happy to pick up the phone and educate you or anyone about the sales process and what you should really consider, and can obviously help take you to market or even acquire businesses. I ring them for just about everything these days. Us over at Multiply Me, we are the end-to-end executive search and HR function into the Philippines, helping find better talent and onboarding them effectively. And last but not least, Escala, our management consultancy focused on process improvement, where we help build better systems for your business. That's all the ads you're going to get from me, ladies and gentlemen. The rest is all about learning. I hope you really enjoy and get as much out of these sessions as I do, sitting face to face with some of the world-renowned leaders in their respective fields, asking them the tough questions that they're not often asked. Scott, it's great to have you on an episode of Successful Scales, mate. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy
Yoni,
day.
Yeah, no, thank you. I love the subject that you like to cover, and so I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, well, I mean, we got to meet each other at your event in Vegas at the Casino in the Clouds, which I know we spoke about on your podcast, but I'm going to echo it here. I loved it. It was one of, if not my favorite event. And just glad that we got to meet and hang out. And it was very cool to finally win something in Vegas.
There you go. Yeah. No, it was just like the event that I wanted to be at. So I was like, well, let's just host it. And so it was a good time.
Well, I mean, it's really the event I wanted to be at too. So thank you very much. And it was a great time. So, I mean, we got to know each other a little bit on that night, and since we've had a few conversations, but for people who don't know you, would love you to give me, rather than me butchering it, a little bit about your background and your experience and where you are today.
Yes, for sure. So let's see. I've been selling on Amazon as a third-party seller for 8 years full time, but like calling myself an Amazon seller is sometimes a little bit strange because I spend more of my time programming and just deep in operations than I do, thinking about, actually how to convert customers. So I started BuyBoxer with two brothers, and we really scaled it to be one of the largest resellers in the nation. In fact, there's a while we were in the top 10 of all sellers on Amazon. We've scaled it back a little bit for profitability choices, but and then from there have done a smattering of businesses around Amazon. So I'm involved in way too many businesses, but fortunately they're all under the same subject. So I learn what the conversation I'll have with you, Yoni, I'll figure out one of my businesses that it applies for, and it'll shift that. So I'm always listening and talking with multiple hats. So here's to rattle off a few things. we built a reimbursement service and ended up selling that to Sifted in 2019. I bought a private label business, started an Amazon services agency, and those are still alive and well. And finally, I built another software business called SmartScout, which is where I'm spending more of my time. It's just an analytics tool for Amazon sellers, help them understand their market share, and some additional tools to do their business better.
And on SmartScout, I was chatting to Chris Schifferling, who Global Wide's actually one of our sponsors here, and he was just saying, dude, the analytics and the insights you get out of SmartScout is second to none.
Thank you. Yeah, he's very enthusiastic about it. There's some people that just like are total promoters, like they know what we're trying to do, and it really helps them do what they do. It actually, I built it for resellers. Like that's where kind of some of the ideas came from when we were trying to scour Amazon for opportunities. But then I'm like, well, I have all this brand level data. I can get the seller data very quickly. So it's just kind of an organization. People know Helium 10 and Jungle Scout. They're really great at product analysis. SmartScout takes a step back and does more of like the brand, category, and seller analysis. So for someone like Chris, where he's really analyzing sellers, it just saves so much time.
Yeah, makes a whole lot of sense. And, we were just on a call earlier today, and, I really use them as a massive filter for like who really knows what they're talking about and who's not exactly there. And, for them to be that excited just makes me excited to dig in deeper. But before we dive into anything that's SmartScout related, I'm going to skip over, not to be rude here, but I'm going to skip over the 8 years of Amazon selling experience you have, because that's like it's a standard story, right? And a lot of people have been through it. But I particularly gravitated to a few things that you said here. So the first is you're running multiple businesses, okay? And from someone who's going through a similar thing, I have Multiply Me and Escala, and they're inside of, I would say the same ecosystem or flywheel or whatever sort of vernacular you'd like to use for it. But curious to see sort of like from your perspective, like the challenges or the decisions around, creating and starting multiple businesses. Like how did that come to be?
Yeah. I think the success of some of them has been figuring out where to like not involve myself. SmartScout, the only reason it's the tool that it is today is I connected with a front-end developer. I finally gave that up and be like, I'm just not going to touch that. And I stay on the back end and, figure out what the product will be. And I do get into the data. But, hiring a front-end developer made all the difference. And we're still able to churn out tools because of that. And then our private label business, I entrusted someone to do a lot of the operations, making sure our inventory levels and we're forecasting correctly. And, I only jump in about 2 or 3 hours a week in meetings. And I do really jump into the strategy and figure out what we want to do. And then when it comes to BuyBoxer, we have key managers at different spots. And so it is very challenging from a management perspective to handle very different things that are on different trajectories. But that is the only way, in my opinion, to successfully do multiple businesses is when you're bringing in other people to accomplish those tasks. And that's how you scale your time is by delegating.
Yeah, I mean, couldn't have articulated that better myself. I think, the way I'm looking at it too is that if I can build the systems and the processes and I can bring in the key personnel who are both passionate and capable to deliver on it, then there really should be no reason for me to be inside of the daily minutia, because there's actually going to be people who are not only, well, I don't know about more excited, but definitely more capable than I am from an operational perspective. I would even say from a sales perspective and everything in between. So very cool to sort of see how you're looking at the equation, similar to me. And I look at you as someone, I mean, you made a comment. You were one of the largest resellers, if not the largest reseller in the US, if I'm not mistaken. That's what you were alluding to.
But by catalog size, we were the largest. Still, I believe, are, where we have over 100,000 ASINs active in Amazon FBA.
Wow.
And so, not there's people that are way bigger than us, but we were shipping a lot of different products into Amazon and trying to and so we built software to scale that, to make that even possible, to manage that, huge type of catalog. You got to have a lot of systems in place and software for that matter.
So I said I'd skip over the 8 years of being an Amazon seller, but I can't help myself. I really can't help myself. So, I mean, you have like a little bit of a different experience, education, and background. Like you've come from the technology, acquired knowledge, and then you found your way. So did you find your way into Amazon, or were you building technology first? Like, how did that intersect?
Well, so I got a master's in computer engineering from USC, and then was just doing a few different, software development jobs. And then my brother, who had newly started to sell on Amazon, was having some success, but there was a few things. This is 8 years ago when there was no software out there, anything that it's a really new, ecosystem, and there was just nothing there to make his job easier. And so I quit my job and joined him with this specific idea to just help him forecast and create purchase orders faster and with full knowledge of profitability. He was spending close to 20 hours just to create a single PO. That's because you need to pull, different reports to understand. And he was doing it on a SKU by SKU basis. He's like, okay, this one looks like it sold 12 in 5 days, but he didn't know. I didn't even know if it was profitable. He had to kind of napkin math the FBA fee constantly. So it was, this process that really, we needed to automate. And now we shoot out 100 POs in less than 20 minutes. Just downloads the data, analyzes it, spits it out.
Wow. So, I mean, I'm very fortunate in my position to get to speak to a lot of really exceptional people, on the podcast and beyond. And it's like you've kind of supercharged that whole learning curve where you've had someone who is selling and you've brought in the technology almost at the starting line. And especially when I think about 8 years ago, none of these businesses, the Helium 10s and the Jungle South. I mean, I'm not exactly sure when they all started. I feel like it might not have even started yet, but they definitely aren't. They weren't then what they are today, for sure. That's for certain.
Yeah, no. There was one type of tool out there that is actually the original, was a repricer. Those have been around the longest. If you really want to dive deep into some of the tech that's been created for Amazon sellers, they all started with booksellers. Booksellers are the ones that have been around the longest. And so they started coding a lot of things before, other general merchandise sellers could do it. And so some of the underpinnings of repricers out there are on how to dominate the book category. So and then outside of that, we had to build everything, and it's got some challenges, but it's kind of crazy how we are now, where there are hundreds. There's over 100 tools out there, and some of them really are worth it. So people talk to me often about developing their own solution, and now I kind of don't recommend that people do that. I'm like, if you really want to build something good, it's going to cost you months of time and, thousands of dollars. Whereas if you find the right tool, it could be, a few $100s a month or less, depending on the type of tool and whatnot. And even if you build your own tool, it will never be perfect because every business is a little bit different. Everyone thinks a little bit differently. So like, there's no like perfect tool out there. It just doesn't exist. But so that's why people want to customize and make their own. And I'm like, no, even if you make your own, you're gonna like change your mind. Your business model is gonna change a little bit, and it won't do exactly what you want in every scenario. So I'm cautious to tell people to just like develop. Unless they're ready for the long haul, because there are so many effective tools out there. And I mean, again, when it comes to like scaling your time, we talked about delegating, but implementing technology also, scales your time.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like we're not talking about 8 years ago now. We're talking about current day where most of these companies are venture backed. They have huge development teams. They're iterating at the speed of light, and they're getting more funding than we could even imagine. So it's really it's really a tough time to compete unless you have a specific skill set. I mean, you're literally a software programmer, and you specialize in back end, which you're really sort of helping build the logic behind what's going into a lot of this. So bringing in a front end developer is you're in a really great position, and having done it for so many years too. I mean, it's a different game to get in. Like when I think about the things that I see as gaps in the market, for me to bring on an entire team, and we're building technology ourselves, but more so from a remote work perspective. Like we want to help. It's less about API integrations into, say, Seller Central and, pulling data and things like that. It's more so about our own closed loop, if you will. And we'll have integrations into project management tools and things like that as we sort of scale. But I guess you make a really good point there, is that, be very cognizant of what you're setting out to achieve, have a clear vision in mind. And if you're going through so many iterations, and like any business will through evolution, it's just going to be a costly endeavor. So, be very cognizant of the road that you're going to travel if software development, particularly in the very crowded Amazon space, is the journey that you choose right now.
Yeah. And then, there is always a chance of just like not even creating what you want. It's difficult for people building their first piece of software to trust that a developer that they hire, or that they actually, start to get results. I have had luck with, hiring remote developers. I also once or twice, it just didn't work out. So, the more experience you have, the better you can communicate and make those types of relationships work. I mean, I found people on Upwork, and but boy, did I spend probably about 15 hours interviewing.
And you're someone who has real domain knowledge. I mean, you
sure,
could,
yeah.
hypothetically, you could, if you wanted to, go it alone, but that's a whole thing in and of itself in terms of scaling your time. So I'm saying it's very different if you don't have software development experience and you haven't gone down this road before. Like, how do you actually test for what is real and what is not? And I've had negative experiences before until I found the right people, but that's a journey in itself.
I mean, I feel like any developer worth their grain of salt should be showing you a result or just some sort of prototype in a week or two. If you're not on the right track within a week or two, then it's like, ask you should start to be seeing things. I've seen a lot of people that have wanted to just trust the process, trust developers, and they'll check in once in 3 weeks, and then they'll check in twice in 6 weeks. And that's just really a great way to get burned. because in a new working relationship, you're testing each other out a little bit. You're learning like, okay, the developer's learning about you as well. And each week they're going to get more confident that like they're building something. I didn't even realize about my lead developer right now. I didn't even know he had another job. He had another full-time job. And then about 2 months into working, is about a month or two after we launched, he's saying like, "Hey, I'm thinking about quitting my job." And we hadn't really talked about it, but like, it's like, oh my goodness, like he was doing all of this at night, on the side. And so, but like I did have to build this trust into him, and our connections only gotten better since then, and I relied on a lot. And I wish it would be easier, but it's not possible to build a business without bringing in skilled labor, and which does create relationships that you have to invest in. And I wish there was a easier thing, but I talk with people all the time that want to start an app or this or that, and I'm enthusiastic about it, but I'm also like, well, but it's not easy. And so I think, uh, being willing to lean into this and to invest in people is worth it. But, throw everything you can at it. This is not just like a set it and forget it type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And like you said, trusting in the relationships and building those out are absolutely critical. I think to scale any business, you can't ever, in my opinion, it's very hard to achieve anything worth doing by yourself. You're always going to be limited by the number of hours you can put in. So building a stellar team around you or around the idea and getting people to buy in and finding those domain experts, that's how you're going to create real scale. You said something before, and it's something that I often talk about to prospects and clients about the difference between scale and growth. There's a lot of I think it's almost a vanity metric these days where people talk about what their revenue is and the revenue growth and look how good we're doing, and they're not really thinking about what their profit margin is. More money, more problems. I think I just finally worked out Biggie's lyrics here. You're generating more revenue, but you're actually not. You're not being more profitable. You said you scaled back your business because it was for profitability reasons. I'd love to understand sort of the logic. I guess I understand, but like the decision making process around how that even came to be.
Yeah. I mean, it was out of necessity, I guess you could say. So we got to our biggest year, 2018, we did 65 million on Amazon. And, I'll be transparent and be like we actually were losing a little bit of money that year. And yeah, there's a lot of reasons for that. Like we were developing things, but also our gross margins just weren't big enough. At the end of the day, I think we were averaging 14% gross margin. That is including, a lot of prep and shipping costs into our COGS, but like that is really not that big. What we did into 2019 is we tweaked our repricing settings, figured out how we could get a little more aggressive. We scaled down the number of products that we are sourcing, and we went down. What did we do in 2019? I think 45 million, and at 20% gross margin. 6% gross margin is huge. We also, we fluctuated our teams. Like it was a massive difference in profitability standpoint, but like we had to, because like you can't run a business at that scale and start losing money, because then the numbers get really big. I don't sometimes I've started to understand with people like wanting to steer clear of large businesses, because I'm like, yeah, the problems they get bigger and the numbers get bigger, and it's harder to um, uh, sleep at night sometimes if things uh, you know go aren't profitable. So that's the story, and like, I'm just being honest. And like, but we slingshotted that approach, and in last year, 2020, we did 40 million on Amazon at 2 million profit. So it worked. Scaling and growing gross margins was I'll make that decision 10 out of 10 times. And but boy, is it fun chasing revenue.
I mean, it's so great to finally hear from someone who's taken and had that learning of like more revenue growth. I feel like I theorize this so often and people just don't quite get it, but you're like living proof to say that when you start making better decisions around the business and what the profit margin looks like, and 6% at that scale, when we're talking about 65 and $40 million, I mean, it is not chump change. These are big things. And I think like to pivot a business that's larger, any aspect of it, I mean, there's just so many more moving parts and everything becomes more challenging and more complicated. Like to your point, when people avoid big businesses, when I talk to people about like growing from a team of 4 to 130 in just over a year, people who really get it often say to me, I'm so sorry for you. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to hear that, because the reality is everything is compounded. There's there's larger head count. There's more interpersonal issues. I mean, we're a service business, right? So it's not even like we're selling product. Literally every single new body in the business is a new personality, is a new, mood swing. It's a new issue that might leave you, might join, might request this. Like every single thing compounds the complexity. And so I think when you're building large businesses, whether it's through revenue or through personnel or whatever it looks like, you really have to be ready for what that entails. And you really have to be confident in yourself to make the tough decisions you need to make when you're going through it. I'm sure, like, what was that like when you were, I guess, was it with your brother you were having the conversations about about scaling back? Like, what was the like? What did that look like? What was that conversation like? Where we're not making profit, but we're just generating a shit ton of revenue. What do we do?
Yeah, it was a lot of getting our accounting. We invested a lot to make sure that like our numbers were what they are. It is a little bit challenging with Amazon with so many moving parts, so with inventory and with fees to have good accounting. But like the clear picture we got, we're like, hey, we have to reset this. And we made a lot of adjustments. That's when we spun off one group of our employees onto its own business. That's what kind of spawned the Amazon marketing agency, because we needed it to be profitable on its own right. And so that's what we did. And then let's see, we did have to restructure and found some employees that were maybe not making a difference in the business that we were running. And we said goodbye to some people that like I still am friends with. Like it was certainly tough, but we told them while they were still working, we're like, hey, you still have a job here. It's fine. But like, we think we want to close this role that you're in. And so, spend part of your day, looking for a job. And so that was our idea of severance is, allow them to look for a job while on the job.
I think that's a super ethical way to do it. And it's one where it's, it's win-win. I mean, you're probably eating a loss, but you're doing it with, a full heart, knowing that you're at least buying them that time. And, I think like when it comes to all this stuff, it's all about transparency. It's all about sort of focusing on that integrity that you're dealing with another human's livelihood here. And it's how do we come to a resolution where, probably on both cases, we're not happy about it, but how do we make it work? And that sounds, like a really fair and noble decision. Mate, I've got so many more questions for you. Super interesting.
We've already been all over the place. We've talked tech and delegating, and now we're into
now
scaling back.
so I'll tell you what's next for me is very curious. You effectively sold a SaaS business, and that is quite different. When you said you sold to Sifted, is that right?
That's right.
So
me and a brother, we kind of took our tech that we were doing and something that we figured out and started offering that to other sellers. This was probably 2018. Part of the reason for our loss is the owners were spending time doing other things and investing in other places. Let's see. So we did all right. We probably got about 250, clients. This is the Amazon reimbursement software. I'm sure you're familiar. There's a lot of other players in it, and it can kind of feel like a commodity, but where Amazon makes mistakes in your inventory. And so you analyze the reports, you find out where they haven't reimbursed you, and then you collect that reimbursement. We sold it, and very happy to. It wasn't, I don't even know how profitable it was, but SaaS is a really good business to sell. It kind of commands a different multiple than these Amazon businesses that are like getting 4 or 5 times yearly net profits.
Yep.
Yeah, EBITDA. Whereas a SaaS business trades on revenue sometimes, and that's a different game. So it was great. My brother actually left our company and joined Sifted for 2 years at the time of selling that. And if you ever have a chance to exit your business, whatever type of business, it generally is a really good decision. If you find someone that really wants to buy it, that's where you make your money. You don't make your money building a business because you invest it all back into it. It's kind of, especially in the inventory business, it's really hard to take cash out at any point. It'll kind of derail the train. And it's about selling, that's your reward. And so it was awesome to be a part of that and see it go through due diligence. My code got
they audited your code? Wow.
Yeah. Well,
who'd they bring in to audit your code? I guess they probably had a development team themselves.
Well, yeah. So Sifted actually does. They do parcel audit for FedEx and UPS, and so that's why it's a strategic acquisition for them, is to add on Amazon, to that. So it definitely goes in line with what they were doing, but they had 30 developers on their teams, and I spent a day just answering questions, and there's a few deer in the headlights moments. I'm a little bit rough and spaghetti code, Rambo code my way through things, but I'm happy to get on the other side, and everyone's like, okay, this will work. And yeah.
That is, that's an interesting experience. So wait, so I got to ask you, when you went through this process, right? Because okay, we can talk about the very classic right now, selling an Amazon FBA business, valuation on EBITDA, cash on close, and you have the earnout, or the guarantee, or every different aggregator will name it something else. But when it comes to software, different market. How did you actually? Was it an intention? Were you looking to sell it? Did they come and sort of find you, and how did this whole?
They found us, and my brother will tell you, the person that acquired us, he actually they were the ones that he wanted. He even made our colors 2 years before that we sold the business. match their style. He wanted a certain level of professionalism about the brand, and yeah, sure enough, eventually they started knocking on our door, and it was a very quick yes on our part, because if anyone has more than two businesses or one business, like, it's time to, like, sometimes you just feel like you're spread too thin. And so being able to self on that alone was like, yes, let's do this. The valuation was basically on revenue and on, the potential. There was an earnout, and we achieved some of it, not all of it. And very interesting and different type of, it was a complicated transaction, even though it wasn't very big for their standpoint, but, like, embedding employees from ours into them afterwards, like, that's tricky. And fortunately, at least half the employees of Valence are still with Sifted, so we had some continuity that helped out.
How big was the team?
5.
And so your brother left your joint reseller business to join Sifted. Was that always part of the agreement? Like, how did he leave you?
Well, there were some welcome parts to it. For example, we got to keep him on as an advisor and not have to pay him a salary of $100,000 a year.
Not a bad result.
Yeah, I mean, like, us three brothers, like, sometimes I felt like we were a little bit top heavy with, strategists, and so there was a few welcome parts to it. He actually jumped back into the Amazon game right now, and I'm working with him more closely every day. But he left us for a while, when he joined Sifted, but fortunately he's back and not necessarily on BuyBoxer's payroll anymore. So yeah, like, it's kind of hard to, like, that sounds like I'm, like, wishing he was out, but no, it's just, like, the right time, and it's the right move to make.
Fine, brothers fight all the time, it's part of it. No, I get it. Like, totally. Depending on the level of maturity of the business and the revenue that's being generated, or whether you're bootstrapped or venture backed, all these things have implications as well. And, you probably don't need such a top heavy business, especially if you're talking about, the one that was acquired by Sifted. If 3 of you happen to be working in that business, for example, and you're all sort of the top heavy components of it, it doesn't make sense. I mean, if it's in the FBA, if it's in the reselling business, all of a sudden, that profit margin goes right up. So, again, if the goal was, for example, to exit the business, that's going to look very favorable on, the potential acquisition. And I'm sure he's probably an equity owner of that business. So, these moves, there's more to it there's more strategy to it than just having everyone on the same payroll. And I think that for someone else who's running multiple businesses too, you have to be very strategic as to sort of how do they dissect and break up, and is each one its own independent entity, and how do you allocate resources across? I mean, these are all strategic decisions that you really need to make when you're also looking, we're talking about exit before. I just did a course with a guy by the name of Mac Lackey called Exit DNA, and life-changing. To sum it up, the way in which I look about building value into businesses, and, like, I look at the businesses we have today, Multiply Me and Escala, right? 2 very different businesses. Yeah, they work beautifully together and very complementary, and, they're building on that flywheel. One's a end-to-end executive search and HR functions, the Philippines. One's a consulting practice focused on process improvement. We can build out the business and we can staff it too, but the potential acquirer of either one of those businesses, they're probably going to look fundamentally different. So, if I decide to build technology into Multiply Me, that adds intrinsic value into, like, the IP that is Multiply Me. If we're managing dispersed teams, then, the valuation of that business goes up significantly, right? Now, if we're throwing it all under the same roof, then it's a different story, right? So, That's effectively the reality, is making those strategic decisions when you're trying to when you're trying to grow a business or businesses. You need to be thinking as to like, what is the end game? You said it before, having an exit is the big payday. So you need to look at like, what am I building for, and what is, I don't know if end game is necessarily it, but what's the strategic value you're building in the business? Is it a cash flow business? Are you going to make money out of it year on year? Is it paying your salary while you're growing another one? And that's the big ticket exit. What does that look like? I mean, I see you nodding your head. I feel like these are probably considerations that, these things that you think about on the daily or in any sort of regular fashion.
Yeah, no. Some businesses are, at the seed stage, and some of them are kind of the mid-level, and some of them are like, I'm like, okay, I took this as far as I could get. They're, our business is right. I have one right now where we're like, this is as far as I can get it. And so it's either time to like sell it or, figure some way that it sunsets. And then, on the flip side, like I was saying, SmartScout, 6 months into it, and it's got wheels. Here's the, like when I say wheels, I mean like it's so young. On this Thursday, we're going to start doing some door to door. We've got a map of Amazon sellers here. I'm in Utah. There's 100 Amazon sellers. We're about to like do some door to door sales and just knock their doors and sell them the software. So that's kind of the energy that where that business is at versus BuyBoxer. We've been doing this for 8 years. It's very just like steady state, buy, sell, and I spend less than an hour a week on it. Sometimes it feels like, even though I'm always listening for ways to change it, we've got it there. And so that business is, if someone were to come and like want to buy, I'd be like, yes, come on, please. I've gone as far as I can get.
Well, so you actually touched on another really interesting point, and I know we're sort of coming here to the end of our chat, which is pretty crazy. I feel like we just started talking, but you talked about sunsetting a business versus a business in SmartScout that's now got wheels 6 months in, and you're about to fucking door to door knock Amazon sales. like there is something to be said about having that level of hunger and passion and excitement at the very start of a business. And so I think for a lot of entrepreneurs as well, like they don't know when to, I was going to use a pretty terrible analogy here, but they don't know when to get off the pot or shit, like they really are just like sort of spinning their wheels and getting stuck in this minutia. So I think like that's also something that's really worthwhile considering. Like, do I have the energy to come in, day out, and give it the same level of attention that I once did? And if not, how do I remove myself from that business, close it down, or best case scenario, sell it and make a buck? So what's did you say 8 years BuyBoxer?
Yeah 8. It's kind of crazy.
That's a long time. Like, there's I can't remember what the percentage of businesses is. I really got to look this up because it comes up too frequently, but like you're in a very small percentile of businesses that are still running that far into their existence. I think it's like less than 5% at 10 years or something crazy.
Oh, really? Yeah.
It's something really small. So, that in itself is a massive achievement. And yeah, I mean, I feel like the appetite right now, like there's just both, not just on the FBA side, but even on the, I might even have an interesting introduction for you. I'll tell you after we get off this podcast. But yeah, I mean, there's a crazy amount of stuff going in the space when it comes even to service and technology businesses that can serve complementary service offerings and build this flywheel and move to IPO and all this crazy shit that's going on. So back to you and back to SmartScout. So, you've got this passion, you've got this hunger. Are you starting, now that you've had an exit before in a SaaS business, like, are you starting with an objective in mind now that you've sort of been through, a full cycle?
Yeah, I mean, my objective actually is definitely not to sell SmartScout. It is to grow and to kind of build Amazon is a niche of its own, but to build like the software that, I want to be a part of, it's kind of a once in a life opportunity. Maybe we get investment. And if we do that, you'll probably hear and see more of us because I'll just have more energy. But that's kind of how I'm focusing on that business right now. It's the best type of business to be a part of, honestly. Like if anyone like SaaS business, it's not only it's a tough business to like start, but to like join one, it's fun.
No better
We
business to scale.
Exactly. And the business world knows that. And so they just get a special level of attention. So, if maybe it's a little bit more risky than, the classic private label business that like, thousands of people have successfully done. But I think, the top end reward is certainly the highest for those. And so I'm taking my crack at that. And, I'm sure if you're in the Amazon business, you'll probably hear more about me in the future as,
Yeah.
as we swing for the fences. And maybe one day we'll have someone wearing a SmartScout shirt knock on your warehouse door.
That'll be the day. That'll be amazing. Can I just say I absolutely loved when you said a second ago, if we get investment, it means more energy. That's really it, right? When people are taking on investment, it just it lights a fire under your ass in terms of what is capable from a marketing perspective, from a development perspective. I mean, it just supercharges the entire thing. So who knows? We might head down that route too. I mean, very different spaces that we're playing in, but shit, I would love some of that. I'd love some of that energy.
Well, yeah. And it brings not just energy, but like, if I get someone to like invest, I'm not going to take money from anyone. I want someone that like knows what they're talking about. I'm also
Smart money.
want someone else. Yeah, no, I want smart money. There's no way that I'm just going to take a check from someone. I've got a half a dozen people I could call up and say like, hey, here's this like way cool business, let's go. But like, no, I want to talk to someone that like is like, okay, this is your business. You need this, 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 and this. Tell me the 5 things that I don't know, and introduce me to that. So that's what I'm looking for. And I have to imagine that so there's someone out there that sees what you're doing, and there's a strategic play as well. So.
Absolutely. I mean, now it's pretty cool. I just got hit up by a couple of like VC firms, in recently wanting to chat, and it's like, okay, cool. Yeah. Like you're starting to get noticed. Like, a year ago, I'm like trying to chat to all of them because in my head, what we built with Multiply Me and Escala is like the perfect solution for any VC, right? We can build out their processes and we can staff it at a fraction of the cost of what it is. Like we've built effectively a way to supercharge any, let's call it post-seed or Series A investment, because not that it's expensive, but that's the time where you need to build for scale. So, when I was hitting up these companies, I think now that we're growing and, not that we're this big, bad business that everyone's heard of, but, we're definitely starting to get noticed in certain places. So it's definitely, anyway, it's definitely an exciting time, mate. I'm gonna, before I let you go, just seeing the time here and realizing that we've almost chatted for an entire hour here. I foolishly lied to you at the start and said, yeah, it'll probably be like 30, 40 minutes. And here we are.
No worries, it's been good.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. If anyone wants to find out about SmartScout, BuyBoxer, anything that you're, getting your toes into right now and, really, pushing forward, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you? And who might these people be?
Well, I talk with Amazon sellers a lot. I actually post on Instagram at smartest seller. And that was something that I launched like 2 years ago just to talk to Amazon sellers, engage with them. And SmartScout it was kind of a tool to serve that audience. So I built the audience first, and then, figured out a solution that many of them did. And so, you could reach out to me there, DM me or whatever. And we certainly can keep the conversation going from there. But it's just like interesting that, it's a very niche area of, social media where like I've actually met a lot of people and done a lot of business through Instagram. I get answers to my questions. I'm always asking people like different Amazon tactics. That's probably one of the best spots, but there's the other classics like LinkedIn or whatever. But SmartScout.com is the tool, and it's worth checking out. I mean, there's a few things that like will give you most people wow moments, whether it's the seller map or some of the data insights. So, yeah.
Hey, very cool. Well, Scott, seriously, it's been such a pleasure. I've enjoyed, all the twists and turns that this chat has gone on.
For sure, Yoni. Thank you.
And mate, looking forward to many more conversations. And checking out SmartScout. Highly recommend it, just based on the conversations I'm hearing from Amazon sellers and people around the space. So reach out to Scott, check out the website, take a look, guys. But again, thanks a million.